I couldn't wrap my head around what had just unfolded. One moment, he was the guy I playfully teased, the one who laughed things off and didn't take life too seriously. But now he was someone who stood his ground in a way I hadn't seen before. "Hi, it's Amber here. Let's get one thing straight. I care about Matt a lot. He's funny, kind, and genuinely sweet, the whole package. But if I'm being completely honest, I wish he were a bit, well, fitter. I'm really into working out, and so are most of my friends. We're all about hitting the gym together, encouraging each other to improve and get stronger. Then there's Matt, completely content lounging on the couch. Maybe a little too relaxed for my taste. I'm not asking him to become some kind of fitness fanatic, but it would be nice if he showed a bit of interest. I've tried to give him gentle hints, mostly as jokes. Like, imagine how good you'd feel if you exercise with me. Or, you'd look amazing if you hit the gym occasionally. I thought it was harmless motivation, but yeah, I might have been teasing him more frequently, especially in front of friends. Take last weekend, for instance. We were hanging out at a friend's place, and the mood was laid back. That was until my friend Sarah issued a challenge. She'd been talking about her progress at the gym, and then looked right at Jason and said, "I bet I can beat you at arm wrestling." He laughed, but she was serious. Next thing we knew, they were arm wrestling at the table. It was hilarious watching Sarah put up a fight. She didn't win, but she held her own, and everyone cheered for her. You know how these things go. Before long, everyone was taking turns, laughing and getting competitive. I glanced over at Matt. He was trying to stay out of it, but I couldn't help myself. "Come on, Matt, why not give it a shot? Go up against Jason or even Sarah. She's doing great tonight." He gave me a look that clearly said he'd rather be anywhere else, and chuckled awkwardly. I wasn't ready to drop it, though. A little friendly competition never hurt anyone, right? "Don't tell me you're scared of losing to Sarah," I joked. A few of our friends laughed, which only encouraged me to push further. Grinning, I leaned in and said, "Honestly, Matt, I bet even I could beat you." That one got a huge laugh, and I'll admit I enjoyed the attention. I expected Matt to laugh along too, but instead, he just sat there, avoiding eye contact and looking kind of uncomfortable. I didn't understand why. What's wrong with a little encouragement? It's not like I want to change him completely. Just a bit of effort. A jog here and there, maybe some gym time. To me, it's all in good fun. I like the thought of him being a little more active, more, I don't know, driven. I didn't think much of it afterward. I figured it was just harmless teasing. Maybe even motivation. Sure, he stayed quiet for the rest of the evening. But that's typical Matt. Calm, relaxed, not someone who takes things too seriously. At least that's what I thought. But looking back now, maybe I went a bit too far. "Hey, I'm Matt. Look, I know Amber cares about me. She tells me often, and I see it in the little things she does. But sometimes it feels like she has this idea of who I should be, and I keep falling short. It started small. A few jokes here and there about how I'm not into working out, or how I should try lifting weights. At first, I laughed along. But over time, those jokes started to feel less like fun and more like digs. Especially when she compared me to her fit friends. I've never been the super muscular type, and sure, I'm not obsessed with fitness. But does that make me less of a person? I thought I was okay with it, but Amber's remarks have been chipping away at my confidence. It's one thing to joke about myself, but it's another when the person I care about most makes me feel like I'm not good enough. Then last weekend happened. I remember sitting there, trying to enjoy the evening while everyone else was having fun. The energy was great, but I could feel Amber watching me when the arm wrestling started. Her friend Sarah challenged Jason, and soon it turned into an impromptu contest. Everyone was excited and cheering each other on. Then Amber decided to involve me. "Come on, Matt. Why don't you give it a shot?" she teased, nudging me with a grin. I chuckled awkwardly, not in the mood, but she didn't stop. "I bet you'd lose to Sarah. You'd lose to anyone here." I tried to laugh it off, but my face burned with embarrassment. It wasn't just Amber laughing. Her friends joined in too. Each remark felt like a jab at my pride. Suddenly, what was supposed to be a fun night turned into one of my most humiliating experiences. The worst part was later, at home. I finally spoke up and told her that the teasing hurt and made me feel small in front of everyone. She just laughed it off, saying it was all for fun and that I was being too sensitive. That stung more than her jokes. I usually let things slide, but this made me feel invisible, like my feelings didn't matter. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind kept replaying everything, making me question if I was overreacting or if there was something deeper going on. Why did her comments leave me feeling so low every time? Then it hit me. It wasn't about the gym or the teasing. It was the way she looked at me, like I was falling short, like I just didn't measure up. That was enough. I was done feeling inadequate. It wasn't just about Amber anymore. I wanted to reclaim my self-respect. I decided I wouldn't wait for her validation any longer. I'd build my own confidence. That night, I made up my mind. I was going to commit to working out, not for her, not even to prove her wrong, but for myself. I wanted to show that I could set a goal and achieve it. That arm wrestling challenge. I'd take it seriously and train for it, not to impress anyone, but because I was tired of feeling insufficient. Whether she found it silly or not didn't matter. This time I'd get stronger on my terms. After Matt confronted me about my teasing, I thought it was just a minor issue. I couldn't understand why he was so upset. I mean, it was all just playful banter about his lack of muscles. I teased him before, and he'd always laughed it off. He didn't seem like the type to let something like that get to him. So I figured he'd move past it. That's just how I am. A joke is a joke, right? But then he started acting differently. It wasn't a huge shift, but sometimes I'd notice he was more withdrawn or lost in thought. Maybe he wasn't brushing it off as easily as I assumed. I kept telling myself it was nothing. We both knew I liked to joke around. Then I started noticing odd things, like how he wasn't around as much. I thought he was just busy with work, but it seemed like he was avoiding me. That's when I heard from a mutual friend that Matt had joined a gym. At first, I didn't think much of it. When my friend mentioned it, I even laughed. A gym? Really? I thought it was sweet that he was making an effort, but it felt pointless. He was fine just the way he was, wasn't he? It wasn't like I ever cared about his physique. I enjoyed teasing him, and I didn't think it was a big deal. I told my friends Matt was training for the arm wrestling match, and we all chuckled. It seemed so out of character for him. He was always more about relaxing on the couch with snacks than lifting weights. I figured it was just a phase, something he'd dropped before the match happened. To me, it was just a harmless joke. But when I brought it up to my friends, their reactions surprised me. Instead of laughing, a few of them raised their eyebrows and gave me looks that made me think twice. It was like they were suggesting that maybe, just maybe, I'd gone too far. "Don't you think you're being a bit harsh?" one of them asked. Another added, "Is he actually serious about this?" I brushed it off. Matt and I had been together long enough. He knew me. He understood that my teasing was just playful. There was no way he'd be genuinely hurt by it, right? As the gathering got closer, I started feeling excited. Who doesn't love a bit of competition? I looked forward to seeing how Matt would perform. I figured he'd show up, try to play along, and everyone would get a good laugh. I even considered pushing him to arm wrestle one of the girls, like Sarah or Michelle, just for fun. I knew they'd probably beat him, and I thought it would be hilarious. We'd all have a laugh and move on. When the night of the gathering arrived, I was ready with my jokes. I expected Matt to show up feeling out of place, maybe a little awkward, but still the same easygoing guy I knew. I couldn't have been more wrong. The whole evening, something felt off, though I couldn't put my finger on it until the arm wrestling started. I've always known there was more to me than what Amber saw. But after that conversation, where she brushed off my feelings as overreactions, something inside me changed. I wasn't going to let her or anyone else make me feel small anymore. I was done being the punchline, done feeling like I wasn't enough. This wasn't about Amber anymore. It was about proving to myself that I could achieve something I'd never thought possible. So I took action. I started going to the gym, not casually, but with a plan in mind. I got in touch with Phil, a co-worker and friend who was really into fitness. He was strong, knew his stuff, and immediately understood what I was trying to do. Phil was fully supportive and helped me create a workout routine. I committed to it wholeheartedly, but Phil didn't stop at just weights. He insisted that if I was serious about arm wrestling, I needed to learn proper technique, not just rely on strength. That's when he recommended getting a coach who specialized in arm wrestling. At first, I hesitated. Was I really ready for that level of commitment? But Phil wouldn't let me back out. "You've got the determination," he said. "Now let's put it to good use." So I took the leap. I found a coach, a former champion with years of experience, and started learning the subtle strategies that would give me an advantage. Week after week, I focused on improving my stance, my grip, and how I used leverage. It felt like I was learning an entirely new language of strength. In addition to that, I consulted a nutritionist who designed a meal plan to ensure my body was getting the fuel it needed for the intense workouts. It wasn't easy. There were days when exhaustion hit me hard and moments when I wanted to give up. But each time I felt like quitting, I reminded myself of my purpose. This wasn't for Amber. It wasn't to prove her wrong. I was doing this for me, to show myself that I could set a goal and achieve it. I was done being the guy who was laughed at for fun. I was proving that I could reinvent myself. As the months went by, I could feel the difference. My body was transforming, and so was my mindset. It was no longer about an arm wrestling match. It was about reclaiming control of my life, showing Amber that her jokes didn't define me, and proving to myself that I was capable of more than I had ever imagined. Each day I grew stronger and more confident, pushing past limits I didn't even know I had. When the day of the gathering arrived, I was more than ready. I wasn't going to be the guy who chuckled along with the jokes anymore. This time, I would stand tall and let people see the new me. As I entered the room, I noticed the surprise on the faces of those who had always known me as the guy who didn't take anything seriously. I was different now. My confidence and posture were proof. Amber didn't seem to notice at first. She probably still saw me as the guy who wasn't quite enough. But I had a plan. This wasn't going to be a light-hearted game. I walked over to a few of the guys who I'd usually watched from the sidelines. "Best of 3 arm wrestling match," I challenged, the words leaving my mouth with certainty. They stared at me like I'd lost my mind, but I caught the flicker of doubt in their eyes. They sensed I wasn't the same Matt they used to mock. I wasn't asking for permission anymore. The first round was over in a flash. I pinned his arm down so quickly it even surprised me. The second round I was more controlled, but after winning that one too, it was done. I didn't just feel stronger, I was sharper, more focused, and determined. The guys who once teased me were suddenly speechless, backing off in disbelief. I couldn't stop the smile that spread across my face. It felt incredible. Amber, on the other hand, looked stunned. She hadn't seen this coming. Her eyes widened, and I saw her expression falter. She hadn't realized how hard I'd been pushing myself. This wasn't just about building muscle. It was about rebuilding confidence and presence. I wasn't the guy who let her jokes roll off my back anymore. As my friends cheered for me, I felt something I hadn't felt in ages. Pride. Not because I won, but because I did something for myself. I wasn't proving anything to anyone else. I'd reclaimed my self-respect, and that was enough. It wasn't about Amber's teasing anymore. It was about me standing strong and knowing my worth, regardless of what others thought. When I glanced at Amber, her expression said it all. She wasn't just surprised. She was realizing that the joke wasn't on me anymore. It was on her. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. Matt standing confidently in the center of the room with a look I'd never seen before. It was as if all the playful teasing I'd done over the months didn't matter to him anymore. When he slammed his hand on the table and made that dismissive gesture, it felt like a slap to my ego. His confidence was overpowering, and not in a good way. I froze, watching him turn to face me, his expression completely different from the relaxed, self-conscious guy I knew. Then, just like that, he spoke. "Amber, I'm done. We're done. You made your point, and now I've made mine," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. In that instant, everything I thought I knew about him shifted. It felt like the whole room went silent, even though people were still chatting. I couldn't process what had just happened. A moment ago, he was the guy I teased, the one who laughed things off and didn't take anything too seriously. But now, he was someone who stood up for himself in a way I never expected. I didn't know how to respond. Was this really happening? Was Matt seriously walking away from me? Then I felt it, a sinking feeling in my stomach. Maybe, just maybe, I had pushed him too far. Guilt started to creep in. Slowly at first, then all at once, it overwhelmed me. My jokes, the teasing, the endless comments about his lack of muscle. I thought I was being playful, just nudging him to work out and challenge himself a little more. I never imagined it would escalate to this point. I never thought he'd reach a place where he decided he was finished with me, with my jokes, and with feeling like he was never good enough. When Matt turned and walked away, panic surged through me. This wasn't supposed to happen. I quickly grabbed my phone and tried calling him, but he didn't answer. Desperate, I typed out a message. "Matt, please." I didn't mean it that way. I was just kidding around. You misunderstood. Please don't walk away. I knew it probably wouldn't work, but I couldn't stop myself. I wasn't ready to lose him. Not like this. It wasn't just the relationship I was afraid of losing. I wasn't ready to let go of the version of him I knew. He used to brush off my teasing and let things slide. Now he was someone I didn't recognize, and his change scared me. I even reached out to our mutual friends, hoping they could help. Maybe they'd convince him to come back, to understand that I hadn't meant to hurt him. But what shook me most was when some of them turned the spotlight on me. Instead of mediating like I expected, they made me see things I hadn't considered before. "Amber," one of them said, "try looking at it from his side. You've been embarrassing him for ages, calling it a joke, and now he's finally standing up for himself. Matt didn't just block me. He blocked almost all of our shared friends too. He held on to the ones who had been there for him before I came into his life. The ones who saw him for who he truly was. It felt like he had completely erased me from his world, and I was powerless to stop it. I kept sending messages, kept calling, kept apologizing, but it was pointless. It was slipping away from me, like sand running through my fingers. Matt wasn't coming back, and I had no one to blame but myself. I never thought I'd end up here, feeling so alone, wondering if there was any way to fix things or get him to hear me out. The more I tried to reach him, the clearer it became that I wasn't getting through. The harsh reality began to sink in. Matt might truly be gone for good. The worst part was I couldn't even be angry at him. I had pushed him too far, and now, for the first time, he was standing his ground. And here I was, left questioning what had gone so horribly wrong.